Hello everyone, in this video we wanted to give you our top 10 features for the HyperMesh 2023. This has been realized in collaboration with some of my colleagues, so I identified the main or the most interesting topics for a couple of us, and so let's see in the following minutes what are the different features that we identified as the key ones for 2023. One of the new features, in fact, is a completion of features that was already improved in 22 cycle. It's about the computation of mass, center of gravity, and moment of inertia. So you have different ways to do it in HyperMesh. Either you use this small satellite cone on the measure, and you can do it by component or do it by selection of entities one by one. The improvement is about how the center of gravity is exposed and how do you compute the axis for the moment of inertia and the moment of inertia center. Do you do it based on a global system or a local system in one end? And are you measuring it, or are you returning the moment of inertia data at center of gravity or at the system center, so at a given location? So this you have it from this measure icon, and same if you go to validate mass and you go to mass, center of gravity and inertia, you find the same options to look either for the global system or the local system and to compute the moment inertia either at center of gravity or at system center. Here the difference is that for this one, you get a table directly populated, which, by the way, you can export directly as a CSV, comma delimited or semicolon delimited table. One of the changes of 2023 is concerning the selection of entities from the graphic area, always with this idle mode here. So as a first remark, in the past, or in the previous version, for getting access to the elements advanced selection, either you could click on it or used the space bar. The space bar is not anymore available due to some conflicts with in the background, so you have to use the point. So for getting access to this advanced selection mode with 2023, also it's a point. That said, there is other modes of selection, such as with the Alt button, which allowed by default, for instance, for elements to select elements by face, or if you switch to nodes, the default selection was to be able to do a node pass. This we were able to configure it through the select, configure alt select, so it was a little bit hidden. Now, if you want to access or to change on the fly the preferred method, you just have to use the comma keyword, and this will allow you to change on the fly the quick preference method. So if I click alt again, now I have by component. Coming to comma again, I can change to anything. I can go to pass, for instance, and do the element bypass.
Hi, did you know that creation and management of part representations has been significantly improved in 2023 version? Let me show you that. As you may know, since version 14, the part browser allows you to generate and manage mesh representation of your CAE model. So, what's new in 2023? First of all, there is now a representation manager allowing you to better control the representation. As you could see, the usual predefined representations are there. The common rep in order to generate the mid-surface, the crash 2mm, the crash 5mm in order to generate a 2D shell mesh. The right side of this manager displays the representation parameter, the criteria file and the parameter files. This way, for instance, you can change the way the mid-surface is extracted, changing the method, or you can adapt the param file and criteria file to be used for a specific mesh representation. Another great feature available in this representation manager is the user representation management. As you can see, by clicking on this plus icon, you can add new user representation and use the right side of the window to define the meshing criteria. One more thing to notice is that each mesh control is now associated to a mesh type. What is that? Basically, it's a predefined meshing template allowing you to have access to additional and advanced mesh types, such as tetramesh, hexamesh, rigid body mesh, or even CFD 2D mesh. By the way, the tetramesh type now uses SimLab algorithm, which could be quite useful to generate tetramesh on a complex geometry without having to do some geometry cleanup. Eventually, there are two flags we haven't talked about. This is the input representation and the mesh flag. First, the input representation is basically the required input from which the interested representation will be created. For instance, the common rep requires to have a CAD representation. And, of course, all the shell representation controls are based on the common representation, etc. This flag is, as you can see, grayed, so you cannot change it. The goal is just to have a better understanding of the meshing mechanism, what is expected by HyperMesh. The second flag is the mesh flag. The goal here is to allow the creation of multiple representations in one click based on a predefined metadata. So let me show you that. Let's, for instance, define 3 new mesh representation control. The first one will be, for instance, a min-mesh, asking to have min-mesh of 4 mm element size, and let's deactivate some option, the flatten, and let's remove all the opening below 15 mm. And let's define a mesh flag called mid. For the tetramesh representation control, let's put a mesh flag named tet, and let's ask to have a 2.5 element size. And let's reduce a little bit the maximum angle to better capture the curvature of the geometry. And let's create a last representation control in order to generate hexa thin solid mesh. And let's ask to have 4 mm element size with 2 layers in the thickness. And for this mesh representation, let's put the mesh flag hex. Okay? Once you have done that, let's review maybe that everything is correctly defined. Mid for the mid mesh, tet for the tet mesh, and hex for the hexa mesh. Let's click OK. And now let's create this representation for these parts. Let's select them and let's do a right click, representation, create. As you can see, there is a new option named automatic. Let's simply run it. When this option is selected, HyperMesh checks if any of the PDM mesh flags assigned to the selected part are matching those on the controls, and the matching controls are then used to create the representation of the given part. Let's have a look from the part browser. This big green part has the PDM mesh flag set to mid, this other one to X, and the two last body have the PDM mesh flag set to tet. That's why, let's have a look on the batch mesher that is running. That's why 2 parts are going to be tet mesh, this part a mid mesh, and the last one with hexa mesh. The mesh is done. Let's load the new representation of the 4 parts. And as you could see, we've got 3D tetramesh for the 2 bodies, hexa mesh for the gray body, and 2D min mesh for the green body. Let's have a look inside with a section cut.
In 2023, we also reintroduced the position tool as it was existing in the classic interface, so you can find it under the move. Here by default you are in interactive mode and you can switch at any moment to position. So you just have to select your entity. It could be components, elements, groups, nodes, whatever. You can define your source. So let me pick some nodes on circumference, for instance, of the inner circumference here. One, two, three. Okay, we have a thread here, and let me do the same with target. 1, 2, 3, and let's position. And here it is, the position is done. One of the changes in 2023 is about the ribbons concerning geometry and mesh. With the ongoing project about FEA geometry, we reorganized the previous geometry, mesh, and element ribbon into topology, 1D, 2D, and 3D, which for the historical users of the classic interface could remind the geometry, 1D, 2D, 3D panel. Though in topology you will find all the tools that can be used either for geometry or 2D mesh right now, because FEA geometry is currently supporting only 2D elements. The development for supporting 3D elements is ongoing. In 1D, you will find all entities related to 1D element creation and addition. Same for 2D with general min-mesh, patch mesher, rebuild min-mesh, and 3D for tetra, hexa, and thin solids. On top of this, we also completed the migration of the classic panels into these ribbons. So you will find some options, commands that were previously still available only through the historical panel. So we have these merge solid options into the Boolean. And if you go back to topology, you will have a couple of new entities, such as the extract point or nodes at intersections, the lines, extracting a line between at the intersection between planes or between surfaces, elements. We have also the detach, the align project, and into the validate ribbon you will find the edges, faces, and equivalents.
Do you know that parts with non-uniform thickness are now fully supported by the part browser workflow in HyperMesh 2023? In previous releases, the map thickness tool should be executed manually after the meshing in order to retrieve and apply thickness values to shell element. Now, in 2023 version, we have implemented an automatic thickness recognition for the common representation in order to streamline the mid-surface extraction for the parts with non-uniform thickness. How does it work? Basically, when a common representation is created, the batch mesher generates the middle surface and automatically detects areas of different thickness and assigns them to separated components under the parts. And after that, a property is created for each component and the thickness value is assigned to it. Let me show you. As you can see, this model is quite simple. It is made of a single part representing a solid geometry with multiple thicknesses. Let's use the part browser in order to generate a first shell mesh representation. Let's right-click on the part, representation, create, and let's execute the 0.2 mm shell mesh representation by asking to use the offset and planes mid-surface method. Once batch mesh successfully completed, let's load the result. As you can see, in a single step, the mid-surface has been extracted and organized into different components based on the thickness recognition. Then a nice 2D mesh respecting your quality criteria is created and properties properly assigned to it. Eventually, let's have a look on the thickness value. And let's display the 2D shells as 3D element representation. If you want to override this new feature, you can define a non-zero value into this PDM thickness attribute.
In the former versions of the new interface, we introduced FEA geometry. FEA geometry is a new concept where we associate buffer geometries, let's say, to elements, which eventually will be used for definition of contact, for definition of floats, for definitions of boundaries, and then that we will be able to remap such conditions even when remeshing. So we are not yet at this stage. Right now we're still introducing and extending the support of FEA geometry to 3D element. It's ongoing, but stay tuned. In the future versions you will see more improvement about FEA geometry. One of the items that brought confusion into the former version was about showing hiding entities with FEA geometries attached. So let's say, for instance, that I want to isolate a surface. So here I'm with surface, I select one surface, I hit an I, and you see that I have the elements attached. And same if I go instead to elements, if I isolate the elements, I still get the surface visible. From 2023, we have introduced this new icon which allows to decouple the display mode between geometry and FEA geometry, which means if I escape again, if I select my surface, isolate, I just type my surface, and if I select just, so what I can do is, let me select again my surface, isolate, so this surface now, let me go to elements, right click, show them. So here I have my elements, I can hide my surface, and if I select my elements only and ask for isolating, I just have my elements without the surface. So yeah, keep in mind this option if you still see geometry while isolating elements and vice versa. Think about unchecking this last icon. So in our third position, let's show us the connection to material data center. This is a brand new direct connection that you can access from the material. We really recommend for working in a collaborative way to work either with a material library, which is a collection of your materials being stored as file on one of your drive. It could be a network drive and shared across your multiple people. But what we have added in 2023 is with connection to AMDC, Altair Material Data Center. So this is an environment, a comprehensive set of material data, which is available from Altair One. So you need an Altair One account, which may require extra licenses. So you will need to discuss with your sales representative in order to get access to it. But once you have access to this AMDC, you can have access to a large number of metal, plastics, connection materials, which you can filter by producers, by type of software. So here I'm loaded with OptiStruct, so there is a pre-filter on OptiStruct. So basically what I can do is to say, okay, let's have a look at metal material. You can have some details about it. You can find some information, some references, some of the values, some of the properties of this material. And at any time, you can download the model for a given target unit system, provide it an ID, and click on download. And there your material is loaded into HyperMesh. And there are a lot of other capabilities in this tool, such as comparing materials one with the other. But at least what we wanted to show in this video is it is quick now to bring material information into HyperMesh. And here comes a second of our top 10, the second improvement, which is about the reintroduction of keyboard shortcut customization. So for doing this, let's just go to View, Keyboard Shortcuts. And in this shortcut editor, you see two tabs. The first one, summarizes all the HyperMesh function, all the curve functions that you can see in the different ribbons. So let's take any of them, rebuild for instance. Here you can clear everything. I just tried it just before, and you can add anytime because I customized it. Just hit a combination of keys on your keyboard and it will keep this one. You can ask for hiding empties just to see the one that are currently defined. Uncheck this. Please, every time that you add a filter, keep in mind this filter works in the two tabs, so make sure to clean your filter after you define it. So you can do it on the regular functions, and you can also add your own scripts. So here I loaded a couple of my scripts and I can give them some combination. So if I hit on apply, then the combination is done. Here's for the keyboard shortcut. And the top one of our 2023 top 10 new features is about stability and performances, which by the way, it's not completely something new because this is something that we started already in 2021 and 2022, but we needed to wait for 2023 to complete achievements, especially the removal of all the classic panels. So why these classic panels were removal was required for improving the performances? Let me switch to the presentation here to give a bit of hindsight. So from 2017 to 22.3, behind the scene, the new interface was running two processes in the background, which means there were a lot of intercommunication intercommunication between the two processes, which were the source of multiple performance drops and instabilities. Starting 2023 and the complete removal of panels, because the HW_exe process was mostly for exposing the panels. By removing them from 2023, we have a single process, and this brings us several benefits, starting with better invoke time, better stability, and more responsiveness of the tool, whether it's about the user interface or about the controls. So all of these improvements, you should be able to see them if you already use 2022 versions compare to 2023. Just on a side note, there were some localized improvements. One is about the direct min mesh, where we improved from 40 to 65% the extraction for extruded parts. And in case of 2D remesh, by using the rebuild feature, we were able also to significantly reduce the remeshing time. To complete this, let me go to community. I looked at requirements just to point out to a link, which is Altair Simulation 22 hardware and system requirements, which is still valid for 2023. We will have to rename here this link, but it points you to all the recommendations that we gathered for taking the best benefits from the new interface. So not only the general recommendations, the hardware recommendations, but also depending on your configuration. Are you running HyperMesh from a local Windows computer, from a remote Windows server, from a local Linux computer, or from a remote Linux server? And for each one, you have a dedicated link with all the points to be reviewed. So feel free to review these items with your IT team. Feel free to contact us back if anything is not clear in this article, so that we can help you taking the best benefits from the new interface. To complete, thanks for having reviewed this video, and see you later for another videos. Goodbye.